have.
With that, I think we have Senator Batters.
Thanks very much. So how I see this particular issue of this $15,000 poll, I see two primary issues. First of all, that part that you just referred to in the Senate Administrative Rules, the portion that I think that was not met here is the part dealing with parliamentary functions in sub B, where it says supporting or opposing a political party or individual candidate in the context of a federal, provincial, territorial, or municipal election or any other local election. That is, it has to, that is not allowed. Because that particular type of activity falls outside of the scope of the allowable portion earlier stated in that section. And so I don't think Senator Dasko's poll in this case conformed to that section of the Senate Administrative Rules. Two of her poll questions specifically deal with election commitments and party election promises. And those two questions are, first of all, one question was, in 2016, the government changed the following practices with regard to the Senate of Canada. Please tell me if you think each of the following is a good change or not a good change. Then they deal specifically with three sub-items dealing with the Trudeau government Senate independent process. And then the second question, also that I think falls outside that scope, is the question, and looking ahead, do you think a future government should keep these changes or go back to the previous ways of appointing senators? So first of all, the 2015 Liberal Party election platform promised to create, quote, a new nonpartisan merit-based process to advise the Prime Minister on Senate appointments. And then one of the first major announcements made by the Trudeau government was just that. So as well, after Andrew Scheer became leader of the Conservative Party, media asked him at that point whether he would continue this Trudeau government Senate independent process, and he said no. Then last November, Senator Wu, the leader of the Independent Senators Group, he did media interviews where he said that the future of the Trudeau government Senate experiment should be an issue in the 2019 election. And Senator Wu called upon the leaders of the opposition parties in the House of Commons to state their position on this for the election so that Canadians could choose. Then a few months later, after Senator Wu, the leader of the Independent Senators Group, made that comment, then Senator Dasko of the Independent Senators Group did this push poll asking Canadians about what their thought of the 2015 Liberal election campaign promise was and whether they want to, quote, go back to the old ways of appointing senators. The wording of those poll questions is designed to lead to a certain result. And I contrast Senator Dasko's poll with, actually, there have been a couple of polls that Senator Elaine McCoy has done on the issue of independent Senate, and on those ones, she actually appropriately straddled the line in those particular polls. It did not cross the line into talking about election issues, which in this particular case talked about the 2015 election issue and upcoming 2019 election issue, and within 6 months of an election. And I think for those reasons, this one contravenes the rule, because I think Senator Dasko's poll did cross that line. So I think that in this respect, one of the things I wanted to say was I think that that $15,000 amount should be repaid. But secondly, I also wanted to state that I think that the Senate finance procedure surrounding their approval of polls should be tightened, because when we examined this issue, we found that Senate finance does not look at the poll questions to determine whether the poll complies with the Senate Administrative Rules. And poll questions are generally part of the contract. Having been involved in that sort of area before, I know that. And as such, I think that they should be examined. It would not be an onerous activity. Very few polls have been conducted by senators. And in this particular case, there were only 10 poll questions. I don't think that we can rely, for a $15,000 expense, I don't think we can rely on a senator signing something very brief saying, this is for parliamentary business. That is exactly the sort of thing that we got into trouble for when we had the Senate expenses scandal, and we have to be very vigilant on that sort of activity. So I would propose, secondly, that Senate Finance should be looking at those poll questions to determine whether our rules have been properly complied with. Thank you.
Senator Dean.